There are questions that change the way we see the world. Some are so profound, so essential, that even without realizing it, they shape the price of what we eat, the value of what we buy, the destiny of the countries where we live. And perhaps none of them is as powerful as this. Why does the dollar rule the world? How did a simple piece of paper, born in a relatively young country, transform into the currency that decides wars, topples economies, creates fortunes, and determines who prospers and who fails? This is the story almost nobody tells, the story of how the dollar became the universal language of power. To understand this, we need to go back to a devastated, broken, lost world. The year is 1944. World War II hasn't ended yet, but it had already left a trail of unimaginable destruction. Europe, the heart of the global economy for centuries, was in ruins. Destroyed cities, useless factories, bankrupt states. Germany was on its knees, Italy overtaken by chaos, France trying to pick up its own pieces. Even the United Kingdom, the greatest empire in history, was practically broke after years of financing war efforts. The entire world needed money and fast to rebuild. But there was one country in a completely different situation, the United States. While the rest of the planet went through hunger, destruction, and debt, the U.S. had become a giant, practically untouched factory. Its fields kept producing, its industries operated at full speed, its territory was far from bombs, and its vaults were full of gold. And that gold made all the difference. Because before the dollar existed as a dominant currency, the entire world operated based on gold. The more gold a country had, the stronger its currency. It was simple, direct, almost impossible to manipulate. And the United States, at the end of World War II, possessed about 70% of all the world's gold. It was in this context that something happened that would change the financial destiny of the planet. The Bretton Woods meeting. Imagine 44 countries gathered in an isolated mountain hotel, desperately seeking a plan to resurrect the global economy. There, one of the most important agreements in modern history was born. Instead of each country linking its currency directly to gold, all would link to the dollar, and the dollar, in turn, would be tied to gold at a fixed rate, $35 per ounce of gold. In practice, this made the dollar as reliable as gold itself, and the United States became the planet's bank. If a country wanted gold, it simply handed dollars to the American government. It was as if the entire world was saying, "We trust you." From that moment on, the dollar wasn't just a currency. It was a symbol of stability. But what few realized at that time was that this decision also gave the United States unprecedented power. With all currencies connected to the dollar and the dollar connected to gold, the U.S. controlled the tap of the global financial system. Whoever controlled the dollar controlled the world. However, every story of power sooner or later finds resistance. As the years passed, many countries began to suspect that the United States was printing more dollars than had gold to back them, especially during the Vietnam War, when the American government spent billions without being able to admit it didn't have sufficient coverage. And that's when France's then President Charles de Gaulle made a bold decision. He demanded that the U.S. convert billions of dollars into gold. De Gaulle even sent warships to retrieve the precious metal. Other countries began doing the same. The world was calling America's bluff. And then, in 1971, a historic moment occurred that few understand, but that changed everything. President Richard Nixon appeared on TV and declared the end of the dollar's convertibility into gold. Overnight, the dollar stopped being a currency backed by precious metal and became backed by trust. Trust in the American government. Trust in the American economy. Trust in American military power. Many economists believe this would be the end of the dollar as the dominant currency. After all, without gold, why trust it? But reality showed the opposite. The dollar didn't fall, it strengthened. And this happened for one simple reason. The United States was already so important to the global economy that abandoning the dollar would be like cutting off your own oxygen. Countries depended on the dollar to import food, fuel, machinery, technology. International reserves were all in dollars. International debts were in dollars. Global trade was in dollars. And then came the agreement that would definitively consolidate the dollar's reign, the petrodollar. In 1974, the U.S. made a pact with Saudi Arabia, the world's largest oil producer. The agreement basically said this: Saudi Arabia would sell oil only in dollars. In exchange, the U.S. would guarantee total military protection to the kingdom. When this agreement was signed, every country on the planet that needed to buy oil, and all of them did, had to buy dollars first. Suddenly, the dollar wasn't just a global currency. It was a key that opened the door to world energy. Without dollars, no plane took off, no ship crossed the ocean, no factory operated, no country survived. And so the dollar became a monopoly, a tool of power, a silent weapon. And this power became even more evident in the following decades. By 1990, the world was already completely dollarized. Major banks, major companies, major nations all depended on the dollar. International debts, foreign trade, technology contracts, maritime insurance, import tariffs. Everything was calculated in dollars. The world had become a giant machine powered by a single currency. But the true power of the dollar appeared when the United States discovered a weapon that made no noise but destroyed entire countries: economic sanctions. If a country came into conflict with the U.S., they simply froze its dollar assets. They simply blocked its international banking transactions. They simply prevented American banks from exchanging currency with them. And suddenly, that country found itself isolated, suffocated, economically imploding. This happened with Iran, with Venezuela, with African countries, with international organizations, and even with Russian billionaire oligarchs. The dollar became an invisible sword. But no power lasts forever. In recent years, other countries have begun to question the absolute dominance of the United States. China has grown so rapidly that it has begun to challenge American hegemony. Russia has sought alternatives to escape the financial system controlled by the U.S. Middle Eastern countries, have begun to flirt with the idea of selling oil and other currencies. And for the first time in almost a century, signs have begun to emerge that the world could slowly migrate to a more diversified system. Some analysts believe the yuan could gain ground. Others bet on central bank digital currencies. Some say gold will return with strength. Others believe the dollar will remain dominant, not because it's perfect, but because all alternatives are even more fragile. The truth is that the dollar rules the world not just because of the strength of the American economy, but because the entire world for decades built its own survival around it. The dollar is the bridge that connects nations, markets, and products. Toppling the dollar isn't just replacing a currency. It's rebuilding the entire global economic system, something no country can do alone. And so, while countries discuss, criticize, or challenge the system, the dollar remains there, sitting on the throne, not because it's invincible, but because no one has yet found a substitute that is strong, reliable, and universal at the same time. This is the story almost nobody tells you. It's not just about paper, banks, or economics. It's about power, about influence, about how a nation managed to transform its currency into a tool capable of dictating the planet's rhythm. And as long as the world continues to need security, stability, energy, and credit, the dollar will continue to rule. And this is the secret. The dollar doesn't dominate because the United States decided it. It dominates because the entire world allowed it to happen. And for now, it continues to allow it. Claude e uma ie ipod common eros. Por favor, verifique as respostas.